On today's show, 3 things your financial plan could be missing.
This is the Get Ready for the Future show.
Welcome aboard for another edition of the Get Ready for the Future show. Glad to have you with us, recording live on this Wednesday, October 13th of 2021. My name is Scott Inman. Along with me on the table today, Candace Stanley. Welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
How are we doing this morning?
Good. How about you?
Doing good. You like the new set? This is your first time?
It's beautiful. You guys have done a great job.
We didn't do anything.
Yeah.
John didn't either.
I just show up and sit here.
Who did it? Who did it?
That's
Marketing?
Marketing department.
Good job, marketing. You did a great job.
We debuted it last week.
Yes.
John, welcome to back for your first full show.
Yes, and I've been displaced from the middle to the end, so things just continue to change around here. But change the set, change the position, but it's quite all right. We'll suffer through it. It won't be a problem.
Well, the first thing you're going to have to get used to is that people do kind of come by and they might even wave, right?
That'll be all right. If they start waving,
I thought about that on the way over here, thinking, do not get distracted by the people.
You know, when I was in radio, they had big windows like this outside the studio in El Dorado, and I got mooned one time.
Oh my!
Yes.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen.
Now you put that idea out there.
Yeah,
no.
It's out there. Carmen will stop them at the door.
Yes, there's still a lobby and an elevator area. We're not. It's not like it's the street out there, right? So
That's right.
We're going to have a little bit of security, hopefully, that keeps that from happening. But if you haven't joined us yet, welcome to our new set. This used to actually be our conference room. It was a meeting room in our West Little Rock office, but we have a lot more space now than we had in the old radio room, and we are continuing to bring new ideas on board with the set. We are recording the Fastest 4 in here as well, and lots of content, lots of resources coming your way from the Gen Wealth team out of this room. So on today's show, we're talking about 3 things your financial plan could be missing. So the assumption we're making, I guess, to start is that if you have a financial plan, these are 3 things your financial plan could be missing. We know most people don't, and we talk about that all the time on the show, right? The numbers are very, very small percentage-wise of people who actually have a written financial plan. The numbers vary, I think, John, between 15 to maybe 20% of people.
20%, yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think this really does point out the fact that if you don't have a financial plan, these things are even bigger problems for you.
Right.
Because usually a financial plan has some mobility to it, some flexibility to it. If you don't have a financial plan and you're trying to do retirement on your own and trying to just kind of, we'll figure it out as we go along, you're really running through the woods in the dark, and you don't really know what's around the next tree.
Yeah, and I think kind of some people do feel like they have a financial plan, but really don't. They think they get a monthly statement from their 401k. They think that they maybe have some outside investments. They know they're accumulating. They know they're saving, but that's not really a plan.
Yeah, just because you have investments doesn't mean you necessarily have a plan. You know, you may have savings in the bank and assets at a brokerage account or something, but when you're accumulating, it's a different game when you change to decumulating. When you've got to take that as income, you've got to have a plan for that because we've got to watch out for what's coming.
Yeah, and I think that's when people really start to recognize, you know, I've done this all my life, now what? How am I going to make this last the rest of my life? So thinking along those lines, we always talk about the problem is income. It's not really about an asset level. It's about income. And you've got to turn, I mentioned it in the open there, you have to turn your portfolio into an income stream. And I think that's a concept that has to start in people first, because oftentimes we talk about the just-in-case retirement. They're segregated, right? My Social Security, maybe there's a pension in there, and then there's everything I saved. And building an income plan that integrates all that is really sometimes it really escapes people mentally starting out.
Yeah, you've got to have that sort of unification of your money working toward the goal that you have, which is to have regular, predictable, dependable, inflation-adjusted income that you can't outlive. You don't know how long you're going to live. You don't know what inflation is going to do. You don't know what the markets are going to do. So it has to be a well-coordinated structure for you to be able to withstand some of those things, because we know they're going to happen. Already we see inflation happening in the current economy, and it hadn't been a problem for a long time. And a lot of people erroneously thought that inflation was dead, that we just weren't going to have inflation. But you take a look at what's going on right now, inflation is pretty serious. And of course, there's a lot of debate right now as to whether or not that inflation factor is going to be here for a long time or just a short transitory period, as the Fed likes to talk about it.
Yeah, 5.4. That's the number that came out today.
Yes.
In fact, on the CPI. So year over year. So the September number, now that we're into October, September 2021 compared to September of 2020, 5.4% was the inflation rate. So it's much higher than it's been in decades, in fact, in this country. So that's actually our first thing. 3 things your financial plan could be missing. Number 1 on our list is an answer for inflation. It's been heavily debated, as John mentioned, whether it is transitory, but even if it is transitory, it is going to be there on some level. So you think about what your financial plan could be missing, and if you do have a plan, or if you do have even a simple withdrawal strategy in place, when you reach retirement, about pulling money out of your retirement assets, or any of your assets for that matter, it may be more of an arbitrary percentage, right? You're thinking, I'm going to pull 4% out of my portfolio. But have you thought about that needing to increase over time? Because if you think about retirement, the proposition of retirement potentially being at least 20 years in duration, and it could be longer, very easily could be longer, would you work at a job for 20 years and never get a pay raise, never take a pay raise? Nobody would answer yes to that. And so you're going to have to find a way to increase your income through your financial plan, because inflation is going to erode the buying power of whatever income you're taking.
Candace, we work with a lot of clients in the Bryant office, and I know that many times we have people come in and say, okay, I need to have X number of dollars coming in, but it's hard to get them to understand that those dollars are going to need to increase over time, because they think they have maybe a pension and that's going to pay them, really well. But in most pensions, your first check is the best check you're going to get.
Yeah, and a lot of pensions, the first payment that you get on your first day of retirement is going to be the same amount that you get on, the day before you die, right? So what we need to do is not just have and just live on what we're going to be getting every single month. So your pension, your Social Security, those are living paycheck to paycheck. And if you've got, like we said, that just in case retirement sitting over here that you could be using to utilize, your income is not reaching its full potential. You could be using some of that, and you have to have increases in your income every so often to be able to keep up with inflation. That's your buying power. So when things start to cost more later in retirement, because it's going to, your retirement's going to be 20, 30, in very rare cases, 40 years, things are going to cost more later. So that your buying power has to be able to keep up with that.
Scott, we did some math on this. If you have a net income of, let's say, $6,000 a month today, and inflation stays the same as it has for the past 20 years. So we're not talking about rampant inflation here. We're talking about very low levels, record low levels of inflation. So if you do that math and you say, okay, $6,000 a month today, and we don't have any more inflation than we did in the last 20 years, 20 years from now, you need to have $9,171 a month coming in just to buy the same stuff that you were buying 20 years previous with that lower amount of money, because prices go up. Right. Prices continually go up. When you think about what's happened in the last 2 years with prices, we've seen, used cars. The average used car in America was about $22,000 before COVID. After COVID, it's about $28,000. That's a huge increase in a used car. Yeah. And gas prices have gone from about $2 a gallon to about $3 a gallon. All of these things are real. Yeah. And you cannot think that you can just, wing it on trying to structure a retirement income plan that will help you to keep pace with inflation.
Yeah, and even more of the basics. Have you bought steak? Have you bought bacon recently? I mean, you see those prices are going up. And even that, you think about, well, how are you going to get pay raises in retirement? We did actually just find out today that Social Security has announced their cost of living adjustment for 2022. We did a fastest 4 actually on this a few weeks ago, and the estimate then was 6.2. Came in a little bit less than that at 5.9. The way they figure that, by the way, is 3 months ending in October. So the 3 months leading through October, August, September, and October, whatever the average inflation rate is through those 3 months off the CPI is what they set the cost of living adjustment for Social Security. So you think about, well, that's huge, 5.9%, and it is. And we are very glad that Social Security recipients are going to get that. But we also did some looking into the cost of living adjustments over time with Social Security, and they're not really keeping up with actual senior expenses. Maybe they are keeping up with that CPI. Maybe they're keeping up with food and gas, but things like prescription medications and other things that are considered senior living expenses have accelerated at a much higher rate over the last 20 years than those cost of living adjustments for Social Security. So that's not going to keep up with inflation. Social Security is not going to do the trick.
Yeah, and I think that you've also got to think about what's going to happen when they start raising Medicare premiums. You know, the Medicare Trust Fund is in worse shape than the Social Security Trust Fund. And so are you actually going to see that 5.9% increase? I don't think you will. I think there will be some increases over the next few years in the Medicare premiums that are charged against your Social Security check, and that what looks like could be a great benefit to you at a 5.9% increase right now, that benefit could disappear.
So what do? We've talked about the clear need for inflation-adjusted raises in your retirement income. So how do you do that? And I think where this really falls back into is the investment side, and really even the behavioral side of this, because I think we've all met with clients that were maybe pretty aggressive with their risk tolerance when they were accumulating wealth, but they start to come up to that actual retirement date, and things like COVID, when the market goes down, puts them into a free-for-all panic, right? They start pulling money out of equities, or maybe just in general, they think, I don't want to be in equities as I get close to retirement. The need for inflation-adjusted raises in retirement income over time means you still have to believe in equities with a portion of your portfolio.
Yeah, I think that there's that thought that I have to go all conservative in order to keep everything that I've saved, and that's not necessarily the case. There needs to be balance in your portfolio. You should never get all out of equities because, like you said, Scott, we've got to be able to keep up with inflation.
Yeah, and that's the only asset class, that and real estate, John, that have kept up with or outperformed inflation over time.
Yeah, you've got to have balance. That is the key in investing in retirement is balance. And when you look at what we do with the Income for Life model and the bucketing strategy that we provide our clients here at Gen Wealth, balance is really at the center of that. You've got some money invested in low-yielding, stable income type investments. You've got some money that is invested more aggressively that will help to overcome inflation, and we add in that alternative investment part of it in real estate to provide some diversification and to provide almost that pivot point or that centerpiece of the seesaw in trying to balance a portfolio. We think that provides a lot of benefit to our clients.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, in that equity component, when you talk about those buckets, you have to be able to understand that you're not going to be tapping that for a while, right? So if COVID happens again, God forbid, which we hope, but something is going to happen again that's going to make the market go down 20 or 30%, you're not actually going to be taking your income from those investments. Those equities are built for long-term growth so that you can increase your retirement monthly income later. In fact, in those equity buckets, we're not planning to touch those for about 15 years, right?
Yeah, and also those equity buckets provide you the opportunity to harvest some gains and take a look at, okay, when you've had a really good market like we've had in the last couple of years, you can take some of those gains off the table and put those into more conservative investments, and that elongates the time period that you have before you have to tap into those equities. So if we have a downturn in the market, you're okay.
Right.
You've got some money banked to basically glide you through that downturn in the market.
We want to remind you about our free resource, the 15-minute retirement checkup. Find out how likely you are to have a successful retirement. Text the word checkup to 501-381-5228 or visit 15minuteretirement.com. That's 15minuteretirement.com. Back in a moment.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is that we have a unified purpose. Now there's an internal aspect to that, and then there's an external aspect. All of us internally on the Gen Wealth team are working toward one purpose, but that purpose is to work with you, our clients, in whatever need you may have. John F. Kennedy said, efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. I believe that one of the reasons many people have trouble getting up and going to work on a Monday morning is that they don't have purpose and direction in what they're doing. But we do every day, every week, and that's your purpose. Whatever it is that you want to do in retirement, We're here to help you meet that purpose, which means you and the Gen Wealth team all together have a unified purpose.
Did you know there are a ton of financial resources on GetReadyForTheFuture.com? No? Well, bookmark that page for later because the Get Ready for the Future show is back.
Get Ready for the Future show's topic today, 3 things your financial plan could be missing. We talked about in the last segment, accounting for inflation. If you do not have a financial plan for your retirement that accounts for inflation eroding your buying power and thereby provides increases in your retirement income, that is the first thing that it is missing. And we have number 2 coming up. But before we get to that, the Get Ready for the Future show is a radio show in its at its core. It started as a radio show and was only a radio show for a long time, but we are so happy to have these other outlets like our streaming on Facebook Live and on YouTube and our podcast, because if we didn't have those right now, John, nobody would be hearing us right now.
That's right. We love the Razorbacks, but they've kind of knocked us off of the local airwaves because of the TV timing of the games in the last 2 or 3 weeks at least. And again, for next weekend for UAPB, that is an 11 o'clock game as well. And, of course, we're on 103.7 The Buzz in Central Arkansas, and they are the sports station. And, obviously, the Razorbacks are a little bit bigger deal than me and Scott and whoever else may be on the show. And
Not
so
Candace.
My name's Candace.
well,
I'm just kidding with you.
In general, you weren't here last week.
whoever may be on the show at any given point. Man, we're so touchy around here these days. Anyway,
Just tease.
but the point is that we are really glad that we've got this ability. And so if you're catching this, understand that you can always catch the Get Ready for the Future show on our podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher. And also you can stream it live as we're doing right now today on Facebook Live and on YouTube.
Yeah. 3 things your financial plan could be missing. And I should also point out that a lot of times I would get the blame in the past for that interruption, because it would be me talking in a different capacity, right, as the pregame show host for the Razorback Network. But I don't have to take the blame of that anymore.
That's right.
Not on there. It's Phil Elson's fault, right?
That's right.
Our second of the 3 things is an understanding of the effect of rising interest rates. Now, we talked about inflation and needing your income to rise, but from an investment perspective is where we're going to dive in here, the effect of rising interest rates, because we have been talking for a long time about a rising interest rate environment. They have been near the bottom. They really can't go much lower, but for decades it has been a decreasing interest rate environment. We saw it uptick about 2 or 3 years ago, and the market had a fit over that, but we are seeing those inflationary pressures. These kind of all go hand in hand, right, John?
That's right.
The inflationary pressures are pushing yields higher, and that has an adverse effect on bond prices, which can have a negative impact on a traditional 60-40 portfolio.
Yeah, and I want to approach this, guys, by being, again, very balanced in our commentary about this, because the knee-jerk reaction for just about anybody when you say, okay, this asset class like bonds is really kind of out of favor. Oh, well, let's just get out of that. We don't want anything to do with that. Bonds play a role in your portfolio, even in a rising interest rate environment. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Don't knee-jerk react to this by saying, I just want totally out of bonds and all into equity. When you do that, you raise your risk profile tremendously. Bonds still play an important role in your portfolio. You will find bonds in the portfolios that we have here at GenWealth. But I think the key that you have to understand is that all bonds are not equal. All bonds don't perform the same way. but bond prices are affected by interest rates. So let's go back to school on this. As interest rates have been coming down, we've seen bond prices escalate over the last 20 or 25 years or so. It's been a really big time bonanza if you've been a long-term bond investor over the last 20 or 25 years. Well, now that trend is shifting, and now we're seeing rising interest rates, which means bond prices are going to decline. Now, that's a generalization, a very broad generalized statement about bond prices. But there are things, Candace, like adjustable rate bonds, mortgage-backed securities, things like that don't perform in the same way that a traditional 30-year treasury bond would perform as.
Yeah, and also real estate. Real estate's another component of our portfolios for income plans that we do for our clients, because real estate will give us, some yield that we need for a particular segment without subjecting it to interest rates rising and decreasing, and then also the volatility of the market.
Yeah, you've got a factor, an income factor there with the type of real estate that we invest in that provides income, but also some stability of principal to some degree. And so it does kind of act like a bond in a way, and there are other things that we have access to that mimic the performance of bonds in terms of income, but also don't act like a bond does when it's pressured by rising interest rates. And so you've got to be aware of the effect of that. Now, let's talk about the difference between what we do at Gen Wealth and what you might be exposed to. So let's take a look at the typical 401k investor, and let's understand what they're facing. They are in what are likely to be target funds. Target date funds are funds that are prolific in 401k accounts. And nothing says that those target date funds are going to basically adjust their bond holdings to any rising interest rate pressures. They're just in allocation bonds. And so you take a look at that, and you could have some serious downside pressure on a bond portfolio that is in a target date fund, unlike maybe some adjustable rate bonds that could sustain themselves in a hard rising interest rate environment.
Let's kind of dig into that just a little bit more, because when I mentioned allocation, and you said it too, the target date funds are built to increase their allocation to fixed income as you get closer to that date that's on your fund, right? So if you're in a 2025 fund, the idea is every year that you get closer to that, you're going to have more exposure to fixed income. But to John's point, it doesn't necessarily mean they're changing the type of fixed income that is inside of that allocation.
I've had some colleagues in the industry just bash target date funds in 401ks. They said they're awful. They really do. If you think about it, as you get older, do you need to not have as much equity?
Right.
Well, I don't know that that's true, especially in an inflationary environment. And there are some, there's an article out today in our industry publications that basically have, two of the largest asset managers in the world going, yeah, the 60-40 thing is probably not really where we need to be as far as investments are concerned going forward. Well, thanks for joining the club. We've been saying that for a long time here at Gen Wealth, because we don't believe that a rising interest rate environment is a good place for your standard 60-40 investment portfolio.
Yeah, that article you're referring to, we have right in front of us. The headline is Bank Analysts Warn That 60-40 Portfolios Could Be Battered by Inflation. And you look at how it performed. Only 5 times since 2000 has a gauge of a 60-40 by Goldman Sachs calculation. So it's a benchmark they've come up with on 60-40. So that's how they measure it. So it's not necessarily the same as what you might see, but only 5 times since 2000 has that suffered a drawdown of 10% over a month. But one of those was incurred during the outbreak of COVID back in March of 2020. And then in September, it didn't go down 10%, but it did go down 4% for the month, a 60-40 portfolio. So when you think about withdrawing from that as it's going down, that highlights the other risk that we often talk about for our clients when it comes to retirement income, and that's sequence risk. You're going to be selling an asset that is losing value, even in the perceived safe part of that 60-40 portfolio, and that can accelerate the depletion of your account.
Yeah, so if you've got $1 million portfolio, let's say that that's what you're drawing your 4% off of, and it's broken up into that 60-40. So let's say 2008, the market was down 40%, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So then your $1 million is now $600,000. So at $1 million, you were drawing 4%. That's $40,000 a year in your income. If it's now your portfolio is $600,000, we're still drawing 4%. That's only $24,000. You would have to take a $16,000 pay cut in order to keep that 4% rule going. If you were to keep drawing that $40,000 off of the $600,000, that's a 6.7% withdrawal rate, and that's not sustainable. So that's what we're talking about here. If we've got bad returns as we are drawing income off of it, that's a tailspin out of your portfolio, and it just won't last.
Yeah.
I love being on the radio because I have these epiphanies every once in a while when I'm sitting here. For some reason, I just think, oh, wow, that's how we need to communicate that. Because, and I just had one just a moment ago. I was thinking about, these bank analysts and them, advocating for a long period of time, 60-40, portfolios and that type of thing. What they are managing to is a benchmark. What we manage to here at Gen Wealth is an outcome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for the outcome that you're looking for in your portfolio, and that's income.
Right.
Outcome is the income that you get that you're able to spend. And what does that outcome look like? That outcome looks like a cash flow that increases over time so that you can keep pace with inflation, one that is arranged that it's not consuming itself as you're trying to draw money out of a declining portfolio, and one that provides some longevity risk protection that allows you to not worry about running out of money before you run out of time. But I think that's the real difference. If someone asks about what is the difference between what you guys at Gen Wealth do and what everybody else generally does, I think they manage to a benchmark. We manage for outcome.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because that really kind of gets back into the return argument or the performance concentrated discussion when, okay, my portfolio did X return. Well, what does that even mean when it comes to you in retirement? What does that even mean? So what should you do to have an understanding of the effect of rising interest rates on your financial plan? We've talked about it a little bit. Understand that not all bonds are the same, as John alluded to. The fixed income should not just be an allocation, but it should be looking for the right types of fixed income that may be less affected by a rising interest rate environment. And John, really a lot of that comes down to duration, the length that you're holding that. The longer duration you have on a bond, the more sensitive it tends to be on that tail end to a change in interest rates. And then, as Candace alluded to, consider fixed income alternatives. It's not just stocks and bonds out there. There is another asset class that we use when it comes to real estate that can provide potentially higher distributions and when it comes to compared to bonds, and also potentially the possibility of lower volatility in a volatile stock market environment.
And don't kick bonds to the curb simply
Mm-hmm.
because they're under pressure from rising interest rates. They still play an important role in your portfolio.
3 things your financial plan could be missing. That's the subject of today's Get Ready for the Future show. We've gone over the first 2, number 3, when we come back right after this.
A game warden noticed how a particular fellow named Sam consistently caught more fish than anyone else. The successful fisherman invited the game warden to come along with him and observe. So the next morning, the 2 fellows met at the dock and took off in Sam's boat. When they got to the middle of the lake, Sam stopped the boat and the warden sat back to see how it was done. Sam's approach was really simple. He took out a stick of dynamite, lit it, and threw it in the air. The explosion rocked the lake with such a force that dead fish immediately began to surface. Sam took out a net and started scooping them up. Well, you can imagine the reaction of the game warden. When he recovered from the shock of it all, he began yelling at Sam. He said, "Hey, buddy, you can't do this. I'll put you in jail. You'll be paying every fine there is in the book." The game warden was just incredulous. Sam, meantime, just simply set down his net, took out another stick of dynamite. He lit it, tossed it this time in the lap of the game warden with these words, "Are you going to sit there all day complaining, or are you going to fish?" For some of us, the same question could be asked about our retirement. This is John Shrewsbury with Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. Whether it's trying to find the best investment or just worrying about the stock market, a lot of folks seem frozen with retirement indecision, and that very well could lead to an explosion of your own, an explosion of your dreams for a comfortable future. Plan now for your time on the lake or wherever your dreams take you.
Education-driven, strategy-based, team-delivered. That's how we roll on the Get Ready for the Future show, and we're back for more.
I'm Scott Inman, along with John Shrewsbury and Candace Stanley on the Get Ready for the Future show, at least during football season, for the most part available only online and on podcast. But we will be back on the radio whenever the Razorbacks have a later than morning kickoff on radio as well. We're talking about three things that your financial plan could be missing today. I do want to take just a quick moment to talk a little bit about the fastest four. I referenced that earlier in our show, but if you're not sure what I was talking about there, we do want to give you the opportunity to sign up to get that. So the fastest 4 minutes in investing, as it was once called, on the Get Ready for the Future show, is no longer a part of our broadcast or a part of our online show, but it is still available. We've renamed it, rebranded it, if you will, the fastest 4 minutes in finance, so that we can broaden our scope of the type of subjects we bring you. So it is mostly about the economy and markets, but we will venture into other retirement-related topics as well. And we do it once a week, and we promise to do it in less than 4 minutes. That's why it's called the fastest four. Usually it's only about 3 minutes, maybe even a little less than that, and is delivered to your email inbox. But all you have to do to get it is sign up. It's free, and you can text the word FAST to this number, 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228. And I would ask you to put that number in your contacts, because we have a lot of ways, a lot of things you can text to that number and get resources and educational resources regarding financial topics. But that word FAST is what you text to that number, and then we will get that to your email inbox once a week. Today, this week, we just recorded it. We're talking about Congress making some attempts at closing a loophole that allows higher earners to get money into a Roth IRA. So we'll talk about that in the fastest four this week. Number 3 on our list, as we return to our show topic of 3 things your financial plan could be missing, it is control of your required income. So let's start first, guys, talking about what is required income.
So that's what your basic need in retirement. So what is it you need just to pay for your groceries and your gas and utilities, taxes, insurance, things that you know are coming every single month that you've got to pay for. And you don't necessarily want to subject that income to market risk.
And things like food, clothing, transportation, you name it, those essential expenses, Scott, are the things that you've got to think about first as you're planning for retirement. A lot of people, approach retirement, and it's almost like they get this twinkle in their eye because the piggy bank is about to be open.
Right.
They see that opportunity that when they retire, they're going to go do this and this and this and this and this. And all of that is great. But I will tell you, there is no better comfort than knowing that all of your base level expenses are taken care of. Mm-hmm. And if those base level expenses are taken care of, then you can go and have some fun with the other money that you've got. But you got to protect the home base first. And so that's why we really do focus first on talking to our clients about figuring out what their required income is. And I think it's funny, Candace, when we are doing an appointment and we are talking to somebody about that's thinking about retirement, you say, well, how much money do you need in retirement? And they will give you this really glazed over blank look.
Yeah, it's the deer in headlights, like, well, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell us what you spend on a regular basis. Yeah. And so, Scott, that really is one of the biggest difficulties that people have when they come in, is trying to go, okay, well, what do I spend?
Yeah. I think it's important too, because I thought of a client that we just met with yesterday that would fall into part of this. Now he already has the plan, so he was coming to us to ask the question. But you mentioned the piggy bank being open. Sometimes it's not even for a free-for-all spending spree that they're looking to go on. Sometimes they're looking to pay off debt right on day one of retirement, which is I think a great concept, right?
Yes.
You need to be focused on getting rid of all those monthly payments, right? You want to get rid of it, but the way they want to do that is to potentially pull six figures or more out of their retirement assets before the plan is in place. So I would say if you're watching or listening to us today and you're closing in on retirement and you either have a financial plan that doesn't account for control of your required income, or you don't have a financial plan at all, don't tap the piggy bank to pay off all your debt unless that financial plan is in place.
And speaking to that, when they think about, let's say a mortgage, for example, is usually what we'll hear. I want to pay that off as soon as I retire. But what they're not thinking about is that a lot of times they'll have a 401k, and all of that is pre-tax money. So they don't just have to take out what they owe. You've got to account for the taxes on that too. So you're taking a whole lot more out of your portfolio that could be income generation for you.
And Candace, those taxes could be more than they think, because they've got some income that they're living on now, and if they take that big lump sum out, it could throw them into a higher tax bracket.
Especially in that first year of retirement where you've earned most of your income that year and then you retire.
Yeah, that could be a real problem.
And so much of this is mindset. I mentioned this before in the show, as the assets that you've accumulated, many people look at them as just in case assets. They're all, we talked about tapping the piggy bank early. The other end of that spectrum is I'm not going to touch that unless the world falls apart, and I'm going to live on what my guaranteed income is, which is usually 2 Social Security checks if it's a couple. Maybe there's a pension in there, but when you consider these numbers, Social Security covers just about everyone, but the average benefit is about $1,400 per month. And now listen to this. Meanwhile, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average retired couple spends about $5,300 a month before taxes on their basic monthly expenses. So if you figure the average benefit's $1,400 per month per individual, okay, so you double that, make it $2,800 per couple, that's still not even close to what you need according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, $5,300 before taxes. So you're still talking about well over $4,000. Now that's not specific to you. Your numbers are your numbers, so it may be lower, it may be higher, but that's where the planning process determines that required income. When you look at those expenses and you walk through that with your client, you determine what are we going to need on a monthly basis in retirement just to have some standard of living. That's your dignity. That's your foundation of your house, as we talk about with the house analogy. It buys your dignity, and that required income should be met with monthly, predictable, dependable, guaranteed income. So what you're going to be looking at doing, guys, and when we move into the what should you do here, is if there is a gap between what your required income need is and what your guaranteed income sources are through Social Security and other places, then we need to carve out a portion of the assets to allocate to an investment vehicle, which is an annuity, that will give you a guaranteed monthly check for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you want to create that pensionized income, if you will. Yeah. It's much like having a pension. Everybody would love to have a job that has a pension, and unfortunately, pensions are going away in the United States. They've decreased significantly, and fewer companies are providing them. So, what is stepping into its place? It is the traditional thought process of annuitizing income, but we don't annuitize here at GenWealth. We provide income guarantees through the vendors that we have and the insurance companies that we work with. They provide income guarantees to folks, but still have those assets invested.
Right. You still have an account value, but in case that account value gets depleted because you live a long time, you're still going to get that monthly check arriving to you in your bank account. And, you think about that when we talked about the risk in the last segment of being sequence risk, and our first risk was inflation risk. This guaranteed income stream that you cannot outlive is protecting against longevity risk.
Yeah, it is not unusual for us to be talking to folks and them have family members that are in their 90s and still alive.
Yeah, we talked with a couple this week who, let's see, her mother was 72, so that's good, but her grandmother was 100.
Yeah.
And so she's got longevity in her family. We've got to consider that when we're putting together her plan.
Absolutely. And the longevity risk is something that a lot of people just kind of, blow off a little bit and they go, I'm not going to live that long. Well, what if you do? Mm-hmm. If you're running out of money, you don't have any other alternative. You've got to backstop that longevity risk by basically transferring that risk to a large, well-capitalized insurance company that says, hey, look, if you run out of money, we got your back. We'll keep sending you a check for as long as you live.
Yeah, and so back to what I mentioned a little earlier about not taking out of your retirement assets to pay off debt on the front end. Maybe you still can once this plan's in place, because you're kind of hearing it now all come together. The asset level is only related to your income plan, right? Do we have the asset level that will support your required income? We might need assets to fill your required income gap. And then the buckets are lined up after that into an investment strategy that's conservative on the front end, so we know that you're not going to see a lot of movement in the account value there, protecting in a low-risk investment strategy there to provide monthly income for the first years of retirement, then moderate in the middle, which is where we often use the real estate asset class, and then still invested in equities on the back end that we're going to leave alone for 15 years. So when you encompass that down to the dollar in as far as how much needs to be invested in what bucket, then you know your asset level, and maybe there's some left over to get rid of debt or to have a side bucket, but that's where the plan really dictates the investment strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point, because John mentioned earlier about harvesting gains. Yeah. We may not be able to take a whole big chunk and pay off the mortgage all at once, but there may be years where we do better than we planned for, because we like to plan for worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. We can harvest those gains and throw a lot of that principal. Yeah,
absolutely. And think about this. What we're all talking about here is the design of the ready to retire process here at GenWealth. Yeah. And if you don't have a process by which you can visualize what's going on in your retirement for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you need to have the ready to retire process applied to your situation, because it clearly gives you that roadmap or that journey through your retirement. And it just isn't about your income or just about your investments or anything of that nature. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about things like estate planning. We're going to talk about things like long-term care and how you're going to accommodate those expenses, because long-term care cost can erode the ability for longevity to be covered, or for inflation to be covered, because you're having to divert those dollars out to something that maybe you didn't anticipate. So all of those things are involved in the ready to retire process. And I would just tell you that all you have to do is pick up the phone, give us a call. You'll speak with Anna Olive, our new client introduction specialist. She will match you up with a GenWealth advisor and a team of advisors actually at GenWealth that are going to apply their trade and their craft to your situation and help you get ready for the future.
That number is 866-653-PLAN. So 866-653-7526 to speak to Anna Olive and get connected with a GenWealth financial advisor near you. 3 things your financial plan could be missing. We'll continue right after this. There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at GenWealth and harness the power of more.
At GenWealth, one of our standards is we believe in balance, and it's really a twofold standard. For our team, we believe that you've got to work and you've got to do things the right way, but you also have to have some time off, and you can't do your job if your job is all you do. For our clients, we believe in balance because their investment portfolios need to take as much risk as they need to achieve their goals, but not so much risk that they lose everything that they've got. Balance is incredibly important in both our team and for our clients.
have a burning question? Email info@getreadyforthefuture.com with your name, location, and question to get a response on the air from the Gen Wealth team. Now, back to the Get Ready for the Future show.
My name is Scott Inman with Candace Stanley and John Shrewsbury on the Get Ready for the Future show today, talking about 3 things your financial plan could be missing. Want to remind you again about our 15-minute retirement checkup. How likely are you to have a successful retirement? It's easy to find out a broad view of that by texting the word checkup to 501-381-5228. Again, the number is 501-381-5228. Or you can go to our website, visit 15minuteretirement.com. That's the number 1 and the number 5, and then spell out minuteretirement.com. For the time it takes you to check your social media, you can find out a little bit more about, are you on track for a successful retirement. Would tell you that it's a very broad-eyed general view for sure. You want to come in and get the planning process after that, but it will give you kind of a gauge to where you are, no matter where you are on your retirement journey. So the subject, guys, of the show today, 3 things your financial plan could be missing. You may have been thinking, okay, we have already gone through 3, and we have. The first thing that it may be missing, an answer for inflation. You have to have inflation-adjusted raises to your retirement income because things are going to cost more. We all are more sensitive to that reality right now with inflation year over year. Just coming in today, the report at 5.4%, higher than it's been in a long time. Number 2 was an understanding of the effect of rising interest rates, what that does, and the pressure it can put, downward pressure on a bond portfolio or a fixed income component of your overall portfolio and what you should do there. And then number 3 was control of your required income. What is that? That is the amount on a monthly basis that you're going to need really just to have some base lifestyle in retirement. It's not the extras. It's the things you have to have. The money going out of your bank account every month has to be met with guaranteed money coming in, and how to do that. But we've got a bonus for you in this final segment. What has your retirement plan or your financial plan potentially missing? You know, everything we talked about in the first 3 segments was strategy, was investments. It was something that is general, and certainly there's a template for everything we do in the planning process with the Income for Life model. But the numbers and the design, this is really departing from the science of it and into the art of it, and that's what makes it you.
Yeah, so going back to that 60-40, that's just a cookie cutter plan that many advisors will just give to everybody. Mm-hmm. They get the same plan. But at Gen Wealth, we're going to make your plan your plan. It's going to have your numbers based on your income. And your plan is not going to be the same as anybody else's at Gen Wealth.
Guys, I think about all of the conversation today about taxes, about inflation, about all of these things that we've talked about today, rising interest rates and all of that. I think the question that I would ask anyone is, what are you going to do about it? You know, a lot of people can talk and a lot of people can listen, but what happens, and I've seen this over the course of my career in the financial industry, inertia can just set in. And nobody does anything, and they just kind of watch it happen. And because there's not some big sudden event that they think they have to react to, then it's almost like that frog that gets, put in the pot of lukewarm water, and they just turn the temperature up on the water on the burner, yep. and suddenly the frog is boiled, and it didn't even know what happened to it. I think that's what happens to a lot of people who don't have a plan. Yep. I think that's what happens to a lot of people that maybe had a plan many, many years ago, but their situation has changed. They haven't dusted that plan off. It's still sitting in a filing cabinet someplace, or if they even know where it's at. Maybe their investments haven't been looked at in years. Been doing great already. We're at a kind of a pivot point right now. Mm-hmm. And if things have been doing great for you, great. What about the future? Right. What about where we're going? And you've got to be prepared for that. And so there's a lot of things that as people approach retirement, they need to make adjustments to their overall plan. And with the numbers that we talked about earlier in the show, Scott, of somewhere in the 20% range of people that actually have a written financial plan, there's plenty of folks out there that really just need to start.
Yeah.
But even if you already have a plan, maybe that plan hadn't been tuned up in a long period of time. And I think that is really where the you comes in, because no one can do that for you but you. But all you have to do is pick up the phone.
And I think there are some out there that think, well, this is not for me. This is for my parents. You know, retirement's for my parents. I don't need to worry about that right now.
That's not true at all. You will, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. Right. And so you've got to have something on paper to get you to the destination that you're trying to get to. Else you're just going to wander.
Yep.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think it has to become a priority, because I think so many people, and I get it because I live it, you're living day to day. You're just trying to manage the day-to-day things that get thrown at you, whether it's related to your job or your family, whatever's happening to you today. And maybe on a good day, on a good Saturday when you don't have anything going on, you think about next month. But you have to, this show's called Get Ready for the Future, and we're talking about the long-term future. So the priority has to take place there. I think what you said, John, is so true. Most people who do come to see us, there's some kind of life event that's happening, and usually it's retirement, right? I mean, when people get closer, maybe months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, that's usually when they really start to make a move, right? And that's fine. It certainly can be done, but seeing it any more distant in your own personal future than that, it's hard to visualize. But let me just kind of urge you, when it comes to prioritizing, yeah, it takes a little work on the front end. You're going to have to gather some statements. You're going to have to think about, what do you want retirement to look at? But that can be fun. That part can be fun. And then once you do it and you meet with a Gen Wealth financial advisor and the plan's in place, it won't have to be that detailed for you as far as your work on the front end after that. But we do know things are going to change. We're going to continue to meet and update the plan as we roll along.
Yeah, and sometimes there's some fear in that. You know,
Sure.
Coming in, they feel like, you know, they may be going to the doctor and going to disrobe. You know, exposing all of your financial situation can feel very similar. We see a lot of people come in and they're just sweating bullets. You know, but you know, we do our best to make you feel comfortable.
We don't have to disrobe. No,
Yeah,
no disrobing is going to happen.
Yeah, none of that.
No
None of
pulling
that.
of teeth.
No, not going to happen.
But what you should fear more than that is not knowing what retirement's going to look like.
Yeah.
And so we can paint that picture for you.
Scott, I will add to what Candace is saying. We respect all levels of wealth here at Gen Wealth. It does not matter where you are or what's happened in the past, to tell you the truth. It doesn't really matter. You are where you are right now. And we've got programs here at Gen Wealth that speak to each person at each life stage. For instance, we've got MoneyWorks, that if you're just getting started and you don't understand anything about finances, MoneyWorks is for you. We've got our Money Guide program that if you're in that middle stage of life and you're raising kids and maybe you got elderly parents that you're trying to care for and you're just trying to figure this all out and get some clarity about your money, Money Guide is for you. And then, of course, we've talked about the Ready to Retire process on the show today. The Ready to Retire process takes you from A to Z during that later stage of life as you're approaching retirement, and helps you to get a clear picture about what is going on as far as your money is concerned as you move into retirement. We wrote a book, Scott, called Your Retirement Should Be More. Myself and Janet Walker wrote this book. I guess it's been almost 3 years now that we wrote the book. But it is really very much a guide for retiring. And it dovetails with everything that we do here at Gen Wealth in helping people get through the Ready to Retire process. And we say your retirement should be more because there's a lot more than just investments.
Yeah, it's about time for an updated version of that book. Now it's been 3 years, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're just
Put
added
a little workload on you.
You just added something to my list, Scott. Thanks a lot for that, man.
It is easy to get started with a Gen Wealth financial advisor. You can call toll-free 866-653-PLAN. Again, that number is 866-653-7526. You can also reach out via email. Just send it to info@getreadyforthefuture.com, and Anna Olive, who is our client introductory specialist, will get back with you and match you with an advisor near you. We have offices all over the state of Arkansas, in Northwest Louisiana, and now in Central Tennessee. There's the bell. That means we are closing in on the end of our time together on the Get Ready for the Future show. It is time for our final thoughts. And Candace, we'll let you go first.
Well, today we've been talking about things that may be missing from your plan, but just, we mentioned interest rates and inflation. Those are things that we cannot control. We can't control the market. We can't control interest rates and inflation and things like that, but we can control the strategy for your income plan. So, guys, just get a plan.
Scott, I would say that if you are sitting here and you're thinking about all the negative things that could be being brought to your mind by everything from network news to social media, they're out there, and that's what they do. Is they are merchants of fear, and you could be fearful about your future. You don't have to be fearful about your future. You just have to be in control of your future and have a plan regardless of what may come down the pike. Your plan is a living, breathing document. It needs to be able to be adjusted as different events in the world and different circumstances in the economy come along. Come alongside a Gen Wealth advisor. Let us help you to navigate through this uncertain time. The three things that we've talked about today, there may be three other things 2 years from now. Don't you want to have a guide through that tumult so you can get through that and arrive at retirement ready to enjoy it?
And my final thought is a reminder about our 15-minute retirement checkup. Just text the word checkup to this number, 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228. Or visit 15minuteretirement.com. That's the number 1 and the number 5, and then spell out minuteretirement.com. In the time it takes you to check your social media, you could have a 15-minute retirement checkup. Thanks for watching this week's show. We'll be back again Wednesday at 11:30.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.